Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this in the world. I hope you guys are doing okay. So the other day I did a video with King J, and in that video, which was almost 2 hours long, we mentioned the heat mechanic, and I said that I thought that this game would be better off without heat. And King J was very quick to agree, and I think a lot of people are very much against the heat mechanic. Now obviously, in reality, heat is here to stay. They're not going to remove it from the game. So rather than just saying heat should be removed, I don't like heat, and ragging on it without giving any real explanations as to what could be better, I came up with a list of explanations or a list of changes that I would like to see in heat. Now obviously my comment section will remain open. If you guys like these changes, let me know. If you dislike them, let me know in any way that you see fit. But these are the changes that I think will help Tekken 8 feel fresh going into the future and not annoy people as much as it might be right now. So in no particular order of importance, I'm going to list off all of these. Again, please let me know what you think. So one of my biggest problems with heat is how the heat mechanic works when you use a move that pushes you into heat. And the first thing that I really dislike about this is when you hit a heat move. For example, if I was to do Feng Wei's back 1+2, which is his shoulder, he will hit you with the shoulder, you will go flying back, and then Feng Wei will run towards you. I don't really understand the logic and the reasoning behind the running. Initially, I saw it as a way to be more aggressive, like you're forcing the player to be in their face and you're forcing the person being to stand there and take the aggressor being in their face. But all it really does is take away player expression and the ability for you to really do what you want and handle the heat mechanic in the way that you see fit. It also makes it very annoying for the person having it happen to them, because it creates this situation where you don't feel like the person attacking you has really worked to the extent that this mechanic is allowing them to do what they're doing. What I think could improve this is if they removed the running feature from it. You already go into heat, and so your character becomes Super Saiyan. You've already been given a buff. You've been rewarded for hitting the opponent. I don't see the reason as to why you would also need to run at your opponent and lock them in place. What I think should happen is moves can put you in heat and they can reset the neutral and then make the aggressor work their way in to fight the defender and not just force people to be in situations, because Tekken has always been praised as a game that allows people to really express themselves with their characters and move around the stage in the way that they see fit. All the heat mechanic currently does is force you into situations, and in the beginning it might have been fine because it was new and it was fresh, but in my opinion it has become very old. It's also very annoying to see over and over again, so I think if you made it so that players could fully control their way in rather than locking the defender in place and locking the aggressor into running, I think it will create a much more enjoyable playing experience, both for the person being attacked and the person doing the attacking. So my first point of contention is resetting the neutral. I think heat should allow for that to happen. Even if there was a minor advantage, it wouldn't be as bad as what it is now. You're completely locked into a forced 50-50 and it's no fun whatsoever. It's not even fun for me, the person doing it, because it becomes a very rinse and repeat situation. You don't get situations in this game now where somebody might be very knowledgeable with how heat works, and so they're able to bob and weave and backdash out of the way of certain things and counter. They are just forced to deal with it. In my opinion, it kind of sucks, and for a game that's always been praised for being complex, this is very simplistic and very streamlined. The second thing that I would like to see changed with the heat mechanics is how the meter works. I think the meter works in a very boring way. There's two ways that you can engage with heat. You can use a move that would put you in heat. So for example, Jin's forward 2, his demon palm or whatever it's called, will put you into heat and you'll get full access to the heat mechanic until it runs out. You can also go into heat raw.
Pause.
And that will give you about 60% of the heat, so you won't get as much time with it. And these are the only two ways that you can actually go into heat. My problem with this is that it doesn't really leave any nuance or complexity for the actual moves, and I think that there are a few issues with this, and I'll outline why. The applications of individual moves should dictate how much heat that you get. So if you have a move like Jin's demon palm, the forward 2, which is not only a heat engager, it does chip damage and it's completely safe and it has a phantom hitbox, why does Jin then get full access to his meter? I think if you've got a move that's already doing so much in the neutral, already has a massive hitbox, is already safe, why do they then get access to the full meter? It's a bit lame and it's a bit cheap in my opinion. The same goes for the character I play, for example Feng Wei. His forward 2, whilst not as good as Jin's, is still a very good move and is completely safe. He gets chip damage on it, it puts him in heat, he gets full access to the meter. In my opinion, if you're throwing out an unsafe attack to go into heat, I think you should get access to more meter. If you're throwing out a safe attack, I think that you should get less access to meter because there was less risk in going into heat. You're already going to go into a Super Saiyan state. Do we need to pile on everything so the defender feels helpless? Not only will it add a bit more depth to the game because the way characters interact with heat will change fundamentally because every character has about 5 or 6 heat engagers, it will also make the player think about where they want to use it. This is also going to tie into something that I'm going to bring up in a little bit regarding how I think heat should function from round to round, but I do think it should change depending on how safe the attack is, if the attack has any armor, and if the attack is unsafe. And on the topic of armor, just to expand on that, I don't think armor moves should have heat. Armor moves already soak up hits. They already allow the defender to push through the offender's offense, and so I don't know why heat needs to be there. Also, a lot of these armored attacks are also safe. Again, another example that I'll give you just because I play the character is Feng Wei's forward 1+2. It is a high, so you can duck it, but like I've said before, what's on paper and what you can apply in an actual match are two different things. Another perfect example of this is Victor. I don't know what the notation is, but I think it's forward 1+2 or maybe forward 2, where he sort of like jabs you in the face with his knife. That move is safe, it's extremely fast and very easily spammable. Yes, it's a high, but it becomes more dangerous when you realize that he's got a mid option of this basically, which can turn into a launcher or counter hit, and is also completely safe. It promotes brain dead play, so I think if you're going to have armored attacks which already soak up moves, do they need to put you in heat? In my opinion, the answer is no. Also, some of these armored attacks also do chip damage, and so it kind of just creates this situation where it's like, this feels a little bit brain dead and it feels a little bit boring as the person doing it. Take away the ability to go into heat on armored attacks. They already have a very powerful application, and a lot of them, in my opinion, or from what I've seen so far, tend to be safe. Another point that I want to bring up, this is a very quick one, is I don't think moves should regain heat. The RKO getting heat back, Leroy getting heat back off his parries, I don't really understand why they would include that in the game. That is really weird. I hate it completely. There's nothing that I have to say positive about that. It's a completely silly change to Tekken, so I would say just remove that completely. I don't think heat needs to be regained in that fashion once you have popped it. It seems really silly, and oftentimes, again, it just annoys people. It's all well and good when you're doing it to somebody, but if you're on the receiving end and you're starting to feel a little bit cheated or a little bit frustrated, it's not a good inclusion. So in my opinion, I would remove that mechanic completely. I would also remove chip damage becoming much stronger in heat. It's getting a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. Again, at the beginning of the game, it was a completely new thing. Brand new, we'd never seen it before. It was like, okay, whatever, let's let it rock. We're now 4 months going on 5 months into the game. In my estimation, it's no good. Chip damage is already something that I would like to never see come back in Tekken, but since it's in Tekken right now and they're not going to remove the mechanic, the only realistic ask is to ask them to decrease the damage or decrease the chip damage. I don't think it should increase in heat. It's just a weird inclusion in Tekken. It's a very 2D Mortal Kombat Street Fighter kind of thing. I don't think it translates very well over to Tekken. If we're going to have it in the game, fine, but it doesn't need to be buffed when people go into Super Saiyan, especially considering heat is so active throughout the game. You're always in heat, it seems. The games are decided by heat. You can pop heat at the beginning of the round, so it's a bit too much in my opinion, and it takes away from the beauty of Tekken. Here's one that might be controversial for some, but hear me out. I don't think heat should start at maximum in the following rounds if you've already used it. So say for example, you start in round 1, you pop heat. They want you to use heat, so they've given you the meter off the bat, no questions asked. You can use it however you see fit. That's all well and good, no problems. But after you decide to use it in the first round, do we really need to give it to them for the second round and the third round? Don't you think it would be better that they earned it? Now, rather than just saying you have to earn heat back and that's it, I've come up with some ways that I think would be good in earning it. Now, there's obviously moves in this game that engage heat, and I'm going to have to further explain this in the next point, so stick with me because it might not make sense in the beginning. I think to regain heat, you should only use moves that engage heat. So for example, if you're using Paul's Death Fist and you hit the Death Fist, it gives you like 20% of the meter back, or 10%, whatever it might be. Now, the only way a mechanic like this could work is if you give the players the option to go into heat whenever they want, because otherwise every time you pop Death Fist, you'll be using that little chunk of meter that you got back. I don't understand why they force you into heat. Sometimes I start the round and I'm like, I don't want to go into heat right now, but I've done a move where the follow-up puts me in heat. For example, if I do 1+2 with Feng Wei and I parry your punch, Feng Wei will elbow you in the chest and then I get a free shoulder. That's really the only thing that I can do there worthwhile, and it will put me in heat. But maybe I don't want to go into heat. Maybe I don't want to pop heat right now. Why don't you give players the ability to go into heat whenever they want, so I can use my shoulder freely as I see fit? Now now that makes a little bit more sense, hopefully it makes more sense to you, where you're able to use heat as you see fit. I think that if you pop heat in the first round, you shouldn't be giving it back in the second and third round. I think it should now become a situation where you have to earn the mechanic back by using the moves that would put you in heat. So like I said earlier, Death Fist, for example, puts you in heat. Forward 2 with pull puts you in heat. Now these moves can be safe and unsafe depending on which ones you decide to use. I believe Death Fist is unsafe against some characters. I know Feng Wei can punish it with his shoulder in some situations, so maybe it's a bit more risky, so maybe you get a little bit more meter for earning that back. But something like forward 2, which although it's a high, it is safe, maybe you don't get as much. Maybe up forward 2, Paul's jumping punch, that's also safe as well. I think he's plus on block after it too, and his forward 4 is also not unsafe. So maybe these moves can grant less meter regeneration, and then you can pop heat whenever you feel like it. So maybe you've got 10% heat and you've got a very short window to use it. That's at your discretion. This will promote meter management. I think it will promote a smarter player base because people will have to manage their meter. The game's just not doing it for them, not just giving them meter for free. I think giving people meter for free every single round is a little bit lame and it's a little bit tired. I also think that if you go into heat and say you've got 10% left and you can use your heat smash, I don't think it should do the same level of damage as if you've got full meter. Let's say I pop heat and I've got 100% because I've used a heat engage, I've used Death Fist, and then I go straight into my heat smash. That should be the full damage because I've got 100% of the meter. It doesn't really make any sense to me whatsoever for me to have like 2% left, 1 second left, and I press it and I get all the damage that I would have gotten if the meter was at max. I think that you need to allow the players to work out how to use the meter effectively, and it will become less boring going forward because there's no way that this can remain in the state that it's in 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the line. It's very stale. All the rounds play out in similar ways. If you implement these sort of mechanics, we'll see Tekken being played drastically differently, and maybe heat will be more well received because you'll see it in so many different fashions. Maybe some people will be hyper aggressive with it and they'll use it first round and then they'll work their way into getting it back. Maybe some people will rely on Tekken fundamentals and then pop heat when they feel like they're in danger. You could open up the level of gameplay in so many different avenues by doing this. So just to reiterate, I think players should be allowed to go into heat whenever they want. I think certain heat engagers should give back certain amounts of meter. I think that you should be able to then pop that heat whenever you feel like it. Doesn't necessarily need to be a full bar. You could also implement a penalty system where if somebody is using a heat engager move to build heat back and then popping it straight away, it takes a little bit longer now to get your meter back because you've overused it. There's an abuse system, so you teach people to not abuse the meter, and then obviously not getting the same damage if you're on 10% versus if you're on 100%. It doesn't really make any sense. Here's one again that I think might be a controversial for some people, but hear me out. I think that the meter in heat should drain faster if you're not being aggressive. They're trying to promote this aggressive playstyle. What better way to promote it than to tell the player, right, you've popped heat raw. Pause. Now you should go in, otherwise we're going to penalize you for just standing around. I think that that will promote the player that is being aggressive to try and find smart ways to get in, and I also think that that would promote them to learn better ways to get in, because the defensive player who's now trying to figure out how they're going to defend against the heat are going to figure out ways to deal with it. They're going to figure out ways around it because they don't want to get hit. So again, it will promote a smarter player base, and I think going into the future you give people more options and more ways to play the game. I also think that when somebody has popped heat and they've used it incorrectly and they've been launched for it, because look, if you're in heat and you're the one taking the beating, that is entirely your fault. Heat affords people so many bullshit mechanics that if you're again getting hit, that's your own fault. So I think if you're getting hit, your meter should drain even faster. I do find it a little bit weird that it pauses when you're being hit, almost to hold your hand saying, hey, it's okay, you popped your meter, but you're not going to lose that much. You'll be able to get up and just ruin the day. I think if you're getting launched, you should just hold that shit. You should have used your meter more effectively, and now you've lost your heat. Obviously, I think this would be even better if they bring in defensive buffs, because it will force the aggressive player to play a bit more smartly. If we've got good defensive options, then the aggressive player is like, right, if I do something stupid here, they're going to sidestep me, they're going to backdash me, they're going to parry me, they're going to counter, and I'm going to pay the price for it. So they will work in unison. It will work hand in hand. It will promote better defensive play and it will promote better aggressive play. It won't just be one-sided, because right now it feels very, very one-sided and defensive players feel completely alienated. alienated. Another point I'd like to bring up is the heat cancel into combo extender should leave you at neutral and should be for the purposes of combos. Allowing someone free pressure is annoying. So here's an example. Let's say you do Paul's Death Fist and you cancel it. You've got free pressure. They've got to guess now if you're going to go for Demo Man, maybe another Death Fist, maybe back sway 2. They don't know what's coming. I think that having it as a combo extender, so if you land the hit and you dash and you get to extend the combo, no problem. That's the reward for landing the hit. But they've blocked your attack. Why are you now being rewarded with all of this pressure? I think it should go back to neutral at the very least. It kind of sucks that you're just stuck in place, especially because some characters in Heat will have a sequence of attacks that you just cannot push a button against, and it becomes even more annoying when you're just taking chip damage on top of it. So I'm not saying get rid of the mechanic. I'm saying adjust it in a way where it feels a little bit more fair. Yes, you're the aggressor. Yes, this is more of an aggressive game. Yes, you will be rewarded for getting the hit on me, but I don't think you should also be rewarded for having your attacks blocked. I think it should at least go back to neutral, so it's not a situation where you're being punished and so it renders the aggressiveness of the Heat obsolete, but it's also not a situation where the defender feels like they're being hard done by the mechanics of the game and not the player. And lastly, and probably not as important, is I think there should be a general damage reduction on Heat smashes. I think some of them do a little bit too much damage. King's one is a little bit silly, and if you couple the fact that there's some Heat smashes that will send you flying across the screen so you get a full wall combo, I think that they should probably have their damage reduced overall. Now the reason that I bring up all of these changes is because I think at its core Tekken 8 is a good game. It's still Tekken, I still enjoy playing it, but the Heat mechanic to me is becoming a little bit too overwhelming, and I think as the game goes on and they come up with more creative ways to implement Heat with certain characters, it might become overbearing and become very boring for people to play. That's just my opinion. I would like them to keep the Heat mechanic in the game. I don't think they're going to remove it, so there's no point asking for it to be removed, but I definitely think it needs to be reworked. It's a little bit simplistic, it's a little bit too powerful, and it offers a little bit too much to the aggressor. And again, I think that player expression in Tekken has always been something at the forefront, and when you lock people in place and you tell them you are taking this and there's nothing you can do about it, not only does it give a false sense of security to the person doing it, it makes the person taking it feel like they've been hard done by the game. And usually when that happens in this day and age, people just turn it off because there are an abundance of games to be playing. There's no reason why someone's going to sit there and play a game that frustrates them to the point where they feel like they're being robbed. So those are just some changes that I'd like to see in Heat. I thought I'd further expand on it because I've made videos on Heat before. I spoke to King J about it, we both didn't like it, but I didn't really offer proper explanations as to what I would do to change it. I'd love to know what you guys think of my changes. Do you think they're a little bit silly? Do you think they're a good idea? Do you think you could add to them to make them a better list of changes, or do you think that the Heat mechanic is fine as it is and I'm just being a whiny baby? Let me know in the comment section below. As always guys, I hope you're all safe, I hope you're all blessed, and I'll catch you very soon. Take care and peace.